here's Brody Brazil.
Well, if I'm being honest, the events of the last 24 hours really put me in a mood to take a break, take a step back for just a second, and have a breath. It's been a pretty intense 2 months, essentially, since the A's turned their backs on Oakland, put all their focus on relocating to Las Vegas, and all the news every day that came out of Carson City and the state of Nevada. Here on YouTube, I've been doing my absolute best to keep you informed and updated with the very best perspectives possible. And it's taken its toll, I can't lie. Physically, mentally, even emotionally at some points. It's hard not to get invested in the story that we're all following and in this case, covering. And so I really wasn't going to make any new material for at least a couple days. I'm not stopping by any means, but I needed a break, and I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't going to talk about the commissioner's surreal comments until I actually saw them and heard them. And I'll play you the most outstanding, noteworthy parts later on. You'll physically hear and see the comments. But it's important you know the commissioner was talking at the end of the annual owners meetings, which just wrapped up after 3 days in New York. And so this was a scheduled press conference. You knew he'd take the podium, face reporters, answer their questions, and because of the hot news of the last 24 hours and SB 1 officially passing in Nevada and also being signed by Governor Joe Lombardo in Nevada, it opens the door to public funding in that state for a new ballpark in Las Vegas on the Strip. So you knew those questions would be coming. And again, I'll play some of the more controversial clips in just a second, but first let me begin in textual format with some answers here. First, a question on the relocation process. Where's it at? Here's what the commissioner says, quote, "They, the A's, have to submit an application. There are pretty rigorous requirements about the application. You have to talk about the market you're leaving, the efforts you've made there, the markets you want to go to, why it's better. It then goes to a relocation committee that has to review the application and make recommendations on things like operating territory, home television territory. That recommendation comes to me, goes to the executive council. They ultimately make recommendations to the clubs, and then there has to be a 3/4 vote." By the way, that relocation committee, Mark Atanasio, hope I'm pronouncing that right, Brewers owner, he is the person who will head that relocation committee that evaluates the A's proposed move to Las Vegas. Sources tell The Athletic, according to the trusted Ken Rosenthal. The committee also will include 2 other members who have yet to be identified. But it is important you know, Mark Atanasio, owner of the Brewers, recently came into the spotlight because it was pronounced that their stadium, American Family Field, needs more than $450 million in upgrades and renovations. It's only about 20 years old, and Major League Baseball did not exactly threaten the Brewers with relocation, but apparently that also was not taken off the table in that conversation. Baseball wants these things fixed. They need you to maintain a certain caliber of facility. So there is that interesting dynamic that the owner heading this up, the relocation committee, is also in a similar situation of fix your stadium or there's going to be a problem. More on the relocation fee, which we still don't know precisely if or not it happens, but the quote will tell you more on it. Quote, "The relocation fee, the ultimate decision, will be made in the process that I described a moment ago. I've been clear with the owners. In the context where you have an owner who's making $1 billion private commitment, moving to a market where they receive public funding, for baseball to step in and have a relocation fee, I don't see that as a realistic possibility." End quote. What's interesting to me is that this seems like the only way a major league team in this day and age would relocate if there was what they like to call a public-private partnership. And they would be making a large-scale investment. And with inflation, I think everything at this point is going to be $1 billion plus investment. So we've had the relocation fee. We've known about it for a while. In fairness, it was not exercised on the Montreal Expos when they moved to our nation's capital to become the Washington Nationals. But just because it was never implied there, relocation has only happened once, that time in the last 51 years. Because it's never been applied doesn't mean it's not a thing and it hasn't existed. Otherwise, why would it even be in question? Why would you be talking about it here? But going back to my main point, if this isn't a prime candidate for a relocation fee, then you ought to just say from here on out moving forward, such a thing does not exist. I mean, look, even recently when the San Diego Chargers came to Los Angeles, I think that was a $500 or $600 million fee. When the Rams went from St. Louis to Los Angeles, also a couple $100 million. But here we are with baseball, and Rob Manfred said, as recent, or I should say the first time you brought it up, December of 2022 at the winter meetings, basically said there wouldn't be one. Now there's some question, some uncertainty, will there not be one? He's trying to lead that there will not be one, but I don't think he's full on saying that here. On the silence of A's ownership throughout this entire process, quote, "Look, we have never mandated that owners have a particular stance with respect to public availability. It's not something we do or leagues do generally. I think each owner has to make a decision as to how he's going to interact with a market. It has been my preference to be more available rather than less, but everybody has to make their own decision on that." He was also asked about the potential of Oakland A's fans staying fans of this franchise through relocation. And look, I've got some feelings and thoughts on this and beliefs on this after living in this area for more than 40 years and understanding our sports landscape, understanding what A's fans have been through in recent decades and how this current process is unfolding. I've got my thoughts. You probably know what they are, but here's what he had to say. The commissioner, quote, "I hope so. I hope that they stay baseball fans, whatever they decide to affiliate with. Again, I'll say it again, the piece of this particular series of events that's the most disturbing to me is the idea of fans that have supported the team losing a team. We hate that idea." End quote. You hate it, but you're going to go forward with it. It sounds more of an inconvenience that you'll deal with rather than something you actually hate. Speaking of the fans, Manfred was also asked about that reverse boycott at the Coliseum from a couple nights ago.
Did you watch the A's game on Tuesday when the fans came out for the reverse boycott?
I was actually at a dinner with the owners.
Did you read the coverage?
I did.
I saw the impression of that.
It was great. It's great to see what is this year, almost an average Major League Baseball crowd in the facility for one night. That's a great thing.
Sarcasm? Anybody? Body language, more than the words he said, which were kind of nothing, the way he said it. Almost like trolling. And I think that's what Jeff Passan here was saying on Twitter. This is the sort of comment one might expect from the handle Rob M. number, not the commissioner of Major League Baseball. To just understand for a second that all you had to say was, I saw them, I heard their message, and I understand how they feel. And it doesn't even have to be much more than that. I guess it was acknowledged, but in a very backhanded way. Yeah, I was at dinner. I heard about it. Somebody told me about it. You're the commissioner of baseball. I know you saw all the clips, the signs, the photos, the videos. Hard for me to think that you would be that far removed from the reality of what happened. And you know what? Actually, let me step away from him and just say this. The fact that he was so maybe physically disturbed by even that question or this topic lets you know that the message was sent and the message in his case was received. That was an interesting interaction and response there. And there was also another one that kind of caught my eye right here.
And I hear from them. I feel sorry for the fans in Oakland. I do not like this outcome. I understand why they feel the way they do. I think that the real question is, what is it that Oakland was prepared to do? There is no Oakland offer. okay? I mean, they never got to the point where they had a plan to build a stadium at any site. And it's not just John Fisher. You don't build a stadium based on the club activity alone. The community has to provide support. And, you know, at some point you come to the realization it's just not going to happen.
Whoa. I mean, the last sentence right there seems like this is a done deal. Forget about expansion or any other future for Major League Baseball in Oakland. He said what? There's a lot to unpack there. And I understand that when he's addressing these media types, they're usually on the national scale, the national platform. They're not minions like myself who are regionally based, but who also understand this story intricately and intimately. Like he said that there was never a site. I mean, the A's themselves, Howard Terminal or bust. How excuse me? What about the $100 million the A's have personally told me that they had spent over time to try and make Howard Terminal work over months. And there were plenty of things that went well and went the right way. There's no plan. How about a certified EIR for the 55-acre site? Land use approvals, things that went to court that were defended legally. I understand it wasn't the smoothest of sailing the entire time, but you had arrived at a resolution where apparently there were a few conversations needed to be had and that the A's were the ones who backed out of those conversations. Not to mention, I mean, the A's just asked the state of Nevada and Clark County for $380 million of public funding. There right now exists in Oakland $400 million secured from state and federal grant sources. More money secured for Howard Terminal than the state of Nevada and Clark County are even publicly funding the A's over 30 years. And last but not least, to kind of go after the fans and the community, like you didn't do enough here. It's one thing if it was just aimed at the politicians here, people with decision-making roles, but I kind of got the sense that the general public and the general fan base was to be blamed for this team's inability to secure a new home. And I mean, we talk about plans. What about Fremont, San Jose, the Peralta site, another site south of Jack London Square, another site downtown Oakland? This was multiple iterations over time that just never came through. I felt like what he said there was just entirely out of touch. At a time that's difficult for the fan base already, and to have no compassion or sense of what was going on, what is going on, and to address it so harsh and brutally. Yeah, that's why I had to make a video on this and just give some thoughts and overall ideas to attach to it. Out of touch is the biggest takeaway for me here on these surreal comments. And if he's out of touch on stuff like this, what about everything else? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so I can see you next time, whenever that might be.